Jima was the last time the rabbits were seen on the battlefield, but it was not their last contribution to World War II. While the war raged on in Africa, the Pacific, and Europe, some of the brightest rabbits in the world have been recruited for one of the greatest scientific endeavors of the modern age.
In 1939, President Franklin Roosevelt received the Einstein-Szilard letter. Signed by renowned physicist Albert Einstein, the letter warned of the development of extremely powerful bombs of a new type in Germany. Fearful of Germany's nuclear endeavors, Roosevelt ordered the creation of an American nuclear research organization, an organization that would become known as the Manhattan Project. For the first 2 years of the project's research, the team was composed entirely of human scientists. But after the military opened its ranks to the rabbits, the team opened its doors as well. After rigorous testing and mental examinations, 3 rabbits were allowed to join the project.
Rabbits are not the brightest of animals, but just like everything else, there's exceptions to the status quo. These 3 rabbits, they took a liking to chemistry, and so they signed on.
With the rabbits' expertise, scientists developed 2 types of nuclear bombs. The first was a gun-type fission weapon. In this design, a uranium bullet was fired into a mass of uranium at extremely high speeds. The collision ripped the atoms apart, causing the already critical mass of uranium to divide rapidly. With 70 spontaneous fissions per second, the bomb exploded, yielding a nuclear blast. The second device was based upon the implosion design. In this method, a ring of small explosives line the outside of the plutonium pit. When they detonated, the pressure caused the plutonium to compress into critical mass. A tamper, or pusher, slowed the expansion of the plutonium, therefore lengthening the duration of the explosion. The plutonium underwent fission, and again, the bomb yielded a nuclear blast. Because there was such a small amount of the uranium isotope used in the gun-type weapon, scientists could not test the device prior to detonation. However, the implosion device used a much more prevalent isotope, allowing the bomb to be tested. On July 16, 1945, an implosion device was detonated in Jornada del Muerto Desert in New Mexico. The gadget, as it was nicknamed, yielded a fireball over 600 feet wide and disintegrated the landscape for 2 miles around.
Everyone was blown away. The military, the scientists, the rabbits, everybody. Now the question became, where will the next bomb drop?
After the Trinity test, it soon became obvious where the bomb would have to be dropped. Emperor Hirohito of Japan vowed never to surrender to the Allies. Even if every woman and child had to fight with wooden spears, they would not surrender. A land invasion could cost more than 100,000 American lives. For this reason, newly sworn-in President Truman made the decision to drop the bomb on Japan. Of the many possible targets, 2 cities were chosen, Hiroshima and Kokura. Both had avoided air raids, were major manufacturing centers, and had large populations. The effects of the bomb would send a clear message to Japan and the world that America had had enough. The first bomb, the gun-type weapon Little Boy, was flown into Japan aboard the Enola Gay, a B-29 Super Fortress. Piloted by 12 men and 2 rabbit technicians that would arm the device, the bomber hummed over Hiroshima on August 6th. Little Boy was dropped at 8:15 in the morning from the bomber and fell quietly until it reached an altitude of 1,900 feet. There, the bomb exploded. Even though less than 2% of its material underwent fission, the blast had a radius of destruction of over 1 mile. Over 80,000 people died immediately. The rabbits aboard the Enola Gay looked back in awe. Despite the total destruction experienced in Hiroshima, the Japanese still did not surrender. For this reason, the decision was made to drop a second bomb. The implosion device, Fat Man, was flown into Japan on board the B-29 Boxcar. Initially targeting the city of Kokura, the bomber turned to Nagasaki after Kokura was obscured by cloud cover. At 11:01 on August 9, 1945, the bomb fell. Over 75,000 people were killed instantly. Like Little Boy, the blast radius spanned just over a mile, but even more destruction was caused by fires that tore through the northern parts of the city after the initial explosion.
The destruction was unparalleled. The destruction was such that even some of the American public was disturbed. It was one of the war's most controversial moments.
On September 2nd, 1945, after 4 years of American bloodshed, the Japanese Empire surrendered and the war was over.
On April 30th, 1945, Hitler committed suicide. By May 7th, all German forces had surrendered unconditionally. Japan followed suit in September of the same year. In total, the war claimed the lives of more than 60 million people and 3 million animals. But what happened next? What happened to the turtles that served Germany and the rabbits that served the States?
When Germany surrendered, everything else that the Nazi Party had done became public knowledge. The Holocaust and all those other atrocities. So there were warrants issued for Nazi officials.
Dozens were captured, including 4 turtles who had served in the SS. The captives were tried in what became known as the Nuremberg Trials. Beginning in November of 1945, the trial sentenced more than a dozen German war criminals to death. While a few were acquitted of charges, the majority received jail terms. Those turtles that were tried received life sentences at aquariums. A great number of German criminals fled to South America, and the turtles were no different. A large amount of turtles sought refuge on the Galapagos Isles, where some believe they remain to this day, disguised amongst the other large tortoises. However, most of the turtles that had fought for Germany had died in the last defense of Berlin in 1945.
Well, there are no actual turtles left. They left behind their relatives. I have with me today Sheldon von Staffenheim, son of Lieutenant Terence von Staffenheim of the German Africa Corps. Good to have you with us, Sheldon.
God, it's great to be here, Kevin. Thank you again for having me.
Now, Sheldon, what can you tell us about your father's service in the military?
Well, he did not want the job, I can tell you that. He was drafted into service in Africa in 1941 and was greatly upset about leaving his family.
And how old were you at the time?
I was 8 at the time. I remember it was especially hard for me and my mother. It was just the 2 of us for a long time.
You're still pretty small, though. How old are you now?
I am 80 years old now, but in human years that translates to about 20.
I see. So what happened to your father?
My father was one of the minute number of turtles that survived the war. My father returned home in 1945 and had earned 3 medals, and we were overjoyed.
Your father recently passed away, as I understand. If you could say one thing to him, what would it be?
I would tell him how proud I am to be his son. He was an humble turtle, kind but brave. He was a great leader, a great patriot, and a great father. I could not have asked for more in a father.
Sheldon, thank you again for joining me today. I'm honored to have met you. I'm sure your father is just as proud of you as you are of him. Now, we've heard about the turtles, but what about the rabbits?
The rabbits returned home in September of 1945, and along with thousands of other soldiers, they were welcomed back as heroes. While most retired back into their lives of forest frolic, others wished to remain a part of the human world. One rabbit, Colonel Joseph Hoppenmeyer, got a job in Washington, serving as a Secret Service member under President Truman. Another, Private William Thumper, went to medical school, earned his doctorate, and opened a hospital specifically for military personnel.
Like the turtles, there are no rabbits that survived the conflict. And unfortunately, I was unable to talk to any of their relatives. Luckily, I was able to stumble across President Roosevelt's State of the Union address from 1945, in which he notes the immense sacrifice of American soldiers and their rabbit companions.
I have often said that there are no 2 fronts for America in this war. There is only one front. There is one line of unity which extends from the hearts of the people at home to the men and rabbits of our attacking forces in our farthest outposts. When we speak of our total effort, we speak of the factory and the field, and the mine as well as the battleground. We speak of the soldier and the civilian, the rabbit and the carrot, and the citizen and his government. Each and every one of us has a solemn obligation under God to serve this nation in its most critical hour, to keep this nation great, to make this nation greater in a better world. The men, women, and rabbits of the United States had risen to the challenges presented to them during the war, and their hard work paid off. Their bravery and sacrifice sends a message that to this day defines our nation, that freedom and justice will never be defeated so long as America and her rabbits stand to defend them.